Hey, good afternoon. Happy Memorial Day. It is MLB, live before lock, 8-game action. Greg tends to believe that we should have the 4 p.m. slate be the main slate. Yeah, but I mean, what are you going to do, dude? We got 1 p.m. People are off hanging out. They get to sweat some baseball throughout the entirety of the day and run the risk of having like half the games not play and not have the right lineups in by the time it locks.
Which really the only reason that I would prefer the slate to lock at 4 instead of 1 is over the course of this show, we're going to get, like we just said, the Braves lineup that came out. Austin Riley's in it. Austin Riley hasn't played in like 2.5, 3 weeks or something like that. So that's going to be stuff I have to update for. Then also we're going to get a bunch of lineups that come in after lock. There's going to be, I mean, the weather obviously is in DraftKings fault. They don't control the weather, but they could have set up the slate at a point where we would have had like all the lineups at lock.
Yeah, we'll work with what we have. Weather, though, is like a legitimate concern today. I would say, at the very least, you should be keeping a close watch on a lot of these games. I'm in the Northeast. We're going to be getting hit by a lot of these, by a couple of these storms coming through, like the Baltimore game, the Mets game, the Atlanta game should be okay. I think it looks like that should be all right, but there's a few spots that are real problematic, and Minnesota and Kansas City. You've got Joe Ryan on this slate, right? So you have Joe Ryan, who is like the best actual pitcher on this slate. This game has a legitimate shot of being in real trouble as well.
Yeah, it's a super dicey game. Let me pull up what the most recent weather is. I was looking at it this morning, but yeah, there was like pretty decent chance of thunderstorms. And the problem too is it's not like it's a 40% chance of thunderstorms there. So it's not enough where it's like, oh, this game is for sure going to get canceled, but it's not the other way either where we could say it's safe. Like it's just a really dicey situation.
How do you approach a slate like this is not an easy question to ask because you only have 8 games and it's not like pitching is great on this slate. You have a few nice options. Don't get me wrong. Few nice options. Joe Ryan against Kansas City. I know you threw it in the expert picks page over on Odd Shopper. Over 5.5 strikeouts for Joe Ryan. I saw that this morning. Nick Lodolo is going up against St. Louis. But by the way, wild winds blowing out to left field in that game, and he's a lefty. So I can't look at that and say that I'm like super excited about the fact that, you know, every righty, by the way, he's a good pitcher. He's got great strikeout upside. So I don't know how much it matters, but the setup at a very hitter-friendly park with 80-degree temps and 14-mile-per-hour winds blowing out to left field for a left-handed pitcher isn't exactly idealistic either.
No, and we'll see what happens with the weather as we go here. Also, so we only have one game that starts at 1 o'clock. We've got 2 o'clock games, and most of the games are at 4. So we've got the Boston-Baltimore game. That has some dicey weather, but it does seem like that game is more likely to play than not. But the Twins-Royals game is the one that brings the most issue potentially. But like you said, also the Boston-Baltimore game has really, really strong winds blowing out to left center field.
Generally speaking, I'm less worried about hitters because if there's an in-game delay, even if it's significant, oftentimes it can benefit the hitters anyway, right? Like you come back out and they dig into the bullpen a little bit. I do worry about starters here in some of these spots. If we have these in-game delays, I'd say the positive here, here's the one silver lining, Greg. And again, I'll ask you how you approach something like this. Maybe you have something that could help people out. The silver lining is that most of these games start early enough to where if you needed to just push them back, it's not the end of the world. It's not like there's 7 p.m. starts and best case scenario is you get a 10 p.m. Eastern start. You could start them, wait till everything passes. If the weather's bad enough and just start them at 4 o'clock.
Yeah. With the caveat to that being that there are thunderstorms expected like on and off throughout the entire day in Minnesota.
Yeah. Not great. Do you do anything differently here or do you just play it by ear?
You kind of have to play it by ear, in my opinion, especially because the games are so spread out. Like a lot of the times when we have a better sense of what the teams are going to do is closer to the game. Oftentimes, if there's shitty weather, the teams might wait until like 30 minutes before the game starts. Like, you know what? Screw it. We're not going to do the game canceled. But just because we only have the 1 o'clock game, then there's the 2 o'clock games after that. I expect that if the game gets canceled in advance for Minnesota and KC, we're probably not going to find out until after lock, which, whatever, just put the lineups through the late swap tool and rerun them and whatnot. As of right now, though, I'm going to leave Minnesota KC in my lineups. If something changes after lock, I'll be running my stuff through the late swap tool.
Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Again, happy Memorial Day. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful weekend. And now this is the end of the extended weekend. We've got early baseball. Gotta love it. If you don't mind, take 1 single second. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Goes a very long way for us. If you're watching, you're off from work, hanging out, ready for some baseball. Subtle reminder here. Take one break from your busy lives. 1 second. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Help us get to 100K. Would be pretty awesome. Anyway, let's get into it, Greg. We can start with pitchers here. And if you guys have any questions, as always, hit us up in Discord, in chat. To those of you guys in playback, Greg and I both have the playback chat open as well. So we got you covered across the board. Let's kick it off with pitching. Joe Ryan. If this is a zero-issue weather game, it looks a lot different. But Minnesota has the lowest total on the slate. As I'm looking, they have the only total south of 4. 3.4. I'm seeing 3.6. What do we do with Joe Ryan in this particular spot at home because of the weather? Because if you're just looking at this, like without context, you're going, hey, Joe Ryan's a pretty solid play today.
Yeah. So as far as here's actually, I really like what the Sims are getting to me with Joe Ryan, because when we do have this uncertainty with the weather, I'm like, boy, I don't really know exactly how I want to approach it. Here's what's cool. We've got Joe Ryan projected for just over 30% ownership. We've got him for 34% ownership over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we have him projected for, actually isn't on the FanDuel slate, so never mind. But on DraftKings, we have him projected for 34% ownership. I've been 33% of my top 150 lineup, so I don't have any real stand on Joe Ryan. Typically is somebody I would like to play in a cash game. If you guys play cash lineups, I do think the weather probably takes him out of cash game considerations. For tournaments, though, I'm really right in line with the field. He's got a matchup against the Kansas City Royals team that has been better than expected this season. I guess maybe we should stop saying that at this point because we're almost, halfway through the year. But 3.15 ERA, 2.78 expected ERA for Joe Ryan. He's also got a 27% strikeout rate. So he's been really good this year. You just have some concerns about the weather. Like, will he pitch 3 innings? Will there be a rain delay? And the game has to stop, and then he has to come out because of that. So it adds some risk to him for sure. But for touring purposes, I'm really right in line with the field.
I'm a little bit below it right now. I am over on a couple of guys though, namely Charlie Morton. And I'm never super excited about getting to a ton of Charlie Morton, but the one thing that kind of jumps off the page to me and is, well, put it this way. One, it looks like this game should be fine from a weather standpoint. So I'm not terribly worried about that. Washington oddly has made some pitchers pay this season when you kind of least expected it. And Charlie Morton isn't, the same pitcher that he once was. I mean, he's been in the league since like 2008. He's almost 41 years old. He's getting up there. But still, 25% K rate on the season. When I look at the underlying numbers on Morton, he's been perfectly good enough. 11.5% swinging strike rate, 3.89 FIP, 3.81 xERA. Like, all of those numbers to me when it comes to Charlie Morton in a good enough matchup against Washington. Like, I would say Washington's another one of those teams where, are they great? No, absolutely not. But I do think at times they've been a little bit better than expected, only because they don't strike out often. Like, they have a 19% strikeout rate versus righties on the year. And that just makes them less of an appealing matchup than one of these other bad teams that also strikes out at a really high clip. So I still probably look to get to Morton today a decent amount. I'm pulling a lot now. They're minus 205 money line favorites. Washington has one of the lower totals today. How much Morton are you getting to against Washington?
Yeah, so Morton also expected to be super, super popular. I'm a little bit underweight to the field, but it's not like a knock on Charlie Morton or anything like that. It's because he's projected for nearly 40% ownership. So he's in about a third of my lineups right now. And if you look at Charlie Morton for the year, you had mentioned it, Lofty, that it isn't necessarily the best strikeout matchup, but Charlie Morton is a little bit priced down compared to where we've seen him historically priced at times. And if you look at Charlie Morton over for the year, even though he is 40 years old, he hasn't really shown any significant signs of slippage. His fastball velocity is 94.2 miles per hour. So that's slightly down from his career average of 94.6, but guy's got a 3.35 ERA, a 3.81 expected ERA. He's still striking out 25% of the hitters he faces. He's 40 years old. The end is closer than it is far away, but it looks like Charlie Morton is still a very, very solid, like top of the rotation MLB pitcher.
Jake DeWitt, what's up, Jake? Oh, that's a 4 p.m. game in Atlanta. Okay. Jake said Joey Gallo 0 for 15 with 12 strikeouts against Morton. Yeah, there you go. Even if they don't strike out a lot, Greg, you've still got 3 from Joey Gallo.
Yeah, it's true.
He had I think if Joey Gallo was never in this lineup, they might have a 16% K rate.
They might have not struck out once the entire season if it wasn't for Joey Gallo.
Seriously. The other guy that, and I mentioned it before, but I don't think pitching is all that great today. I do wonder what we're dealing with Nick Lodolo, because as far as strikeout stuff goes, you and I both know that there's a lot, there's a lot of upside there. That's never my concern. You know, he's got a 31% strikeout rate on the season through his first 6 starts, 30% strikeout rate for his career in 170 career innings. So we know that's there. That's the least of my issues. Last year in limited innings, he gave up a ton of power, got barreled a ton. This year, not so much in the same amount of innings as he pitched last year. How deep do you think he goes into this game? Because it's been about, I don't know, the last time he pitched was the 11th. So he really was only there for a little over 2 weeks on the IL.
Yeah, let's see. Did he make any? He didn't make any rehab starts.
He had an extended bullpen session last I looked.
Is there any information on how many? I mean, what does it really tell us? But
I don't know.
Let's see. Lodolo bullpen pitches. I'm looking online. Yeah, I don't see anything definitive about how many pitches he threw in the bullpen session there. So, I mean, I think my best educated guess is we're probably getting 4 or 5 innings out of Nick Lodolo. And considering his price point, he's also very expensive today at $9,800. It makes him very difficult for me to want to go ahead and roster him. If you look at our projections on him, we have him as being under-owned, but I mean, he's projected for sub 10% ownership. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly a pitcher who, when he's on and everything's right, there's a lot of upside. But I think most likely scenarios, we're getting 4 or 5 innings out of a pitcher who is $9,800, the second most expensive pitcher on this slate, and that is going to keep me away from him.
Yeah, I think so too. I actually, maybe I'm off base here, but I have some interest in these righties for St. Louis. I mean, Greg, I know this has not been a good team this year. This St. Louis team, they've heated up a little bit of late, over the last 1+ weeks. It's not lost on me. Against lefties this season, the St. Louis Cardinals have been middle of the road, 97 WRC plus, 150. Oh, hold on. That was last year. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up. Fangraphs defaulted me back to last season. So let's see. Because I was going to say, I feel like they've been a lot worse this year. There it is. Yeah, 20. I caught because I'm that's not right. They're not 19. They're 28th. Very little power. Not a lot of strikeouts against lefties either. But what about the fact that Lodolo coming off the IL, winds blowing out to left field, 14 miles per hour at Great American. Let's not ignore the fact that this is already a power-friendly park. He's done a good job of limiting power this year. Pretty limited sample. I think he's probably somewhere in the middle of what we've seen before and what we've seen this year. Maybe a 1.2, 1.3 home run per 9 guy. And then St. Louis probably stacks the top of their lineup with like 4 righties out of the first 5 in the order.
I really, really like St. Louis as a stack. One of the other reasons too that
there we go,
I don't
my
really
man.
find myself getting to Lodolo. The primary reason, though, the pricing is ridiculous here. This is a great secondary stack. Even if you guys are uncomfortable stacking against Nick Lodolo with full 5-man stacks, Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt for their careers, we all know how well they've hit left-hand pitching. Paul Goldschmidt is $3,700. Nolan Arenado is $3,800 at third base, a spot that is a little bit difficult to fill. And yeah, once again, it's been down years for these guys. Although Paul Goldschmidt has been slightly better as of late, but he was so bad at the start of the month. There was really only one way for him to end up going here. But yeah, I think you're getting a really good buy low spot on Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. And also against a pitcher who, yeah, if Nick Lodolo is 100% totally healthy, he's a very, very good starting pitcher. But considering the layoff, the time he spent on the injured list, you don't really know what you're getting out of him in his first start. So I think there's a lot of variance here. And I like the value that we're getting on the St. Louis Cardinals. And on the opposite side, like we said, Nick Lodolo is so expensive at $9,800. And I'm pretty dubious he works deep into the game.
I don't disagree. It looks like the Cardinals are getting some ownership here, but we actually have them with the 3rd highest stack score behind only Cleveland and Toronto. So looking at the stacks tool, they don't look bad at all. Are you getting exposure to them right now?
Yeah, they are. Let's see. I have 4 teams I have double-digit exposure to, and St. Louis is one of them.
Yeah, agreed. I have more like 3 and 4-man exposure, but there's something to be said about that being a pretty decent stack, not getting a ton of ownership. What about the other side? We're bouncing around a little bit, guys, but bear with me. We'll come full circle with all of this. But since we're already on this game, we'll get to Bassett and Steele and those guys in a minute. But what about the other side against Lance Lynn? He's actually done. I'm sure you've seen this. I'm sure you guys have seen this in chat as well and just watching the show. But Lance Lynn has done a far better job of limiting power this year than he has in the past. And if you remove that 3-homer game that he had second start of the season, Greg, because mind you, he's made 10 starts now. He hasn't allowed more than one home run in any game outside of that one game. And, he's gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of 10 games starts without allowing a single home run and only one start allowing more than one home run. So I look at this and naturally just, my affinity for getting to left-handed hitters against Lance Lynn that just naturally kicks in, but wind's blowing in favor of righties, unless you're hitting these opposite field homers, which is possible. Also, and we can hit on both sides. I want to just Cincinnati, but not only Cincinnati, also Lance Lynn. What about the fact that Cincinnati does strike out at a really elevated clip against righties as well? Like they strike out a lot against righties, man.
Yeah. So starting with the Cincinnati bats, if you're going to ever attack Lance Lynn, it's got to be with the lefties. He's somebody who has just crazy, crazy splits for his career. It's something like righties for his career have a 280 WOBA against him. Lefties have like a 330. So he gets hit very hard by lefties and he's elite against righties. So if you want to stack against Lance Lynn, the direction you want to be going to is the lefties against him. And then as far as actually rostering Lance Lynn, he is somebody who I'm overweight to. I think he's a pretty reasonable contrarian pitching option. And it's really it's a couple of things that we mentioned over the course of the show. First and foremost, the pitching sucks today. There are not very many pitchers that we could feel all that great about. And then if we're looking for contrarian pitchers that we might want to be rostering, that gets even slimmer as far as pitchers you might want to roster. Because, Charlie Morton's 38% owned, Chris Ryan, 34%, Chris Bassett, 34%, Justin Steele, 32%. So anybody you look at on paper and be like, oh, that guy's viable, they're very, very popular. So Lance Lynn at $7,200 projected for 13.9% ownership. He's the most contrarian pitcher that I think brings the most potential upside to the table. So not necessarily going crazy with Lance Lynn, but he's in 20% of my lineup. So he's a good way to differentiate an otherwise chalky lineup at pitcher.
It's funny with him this year. I'm not sure how much of this is just noise, how much of this is intentional. But like his strikeout rate and his swinging strike rate are down, Greg, but his ground ball rate is up. And if you look at like X ISO, expected ISO allowed to lefties and righties, this year, he only has a 189 X ISO to lefties, which by the way, isn't great, but last year was 225 with a 12.5% swinging strike rate. This year it's 189 with a 10.5% swinging strike rate. So I don't know. I don't know how much there is to actually dig into something like that. But I do think when you look at this Cincinnati team, when I say they strike out a lot against righties, I'm talking about them creeping up on Seattle right now for like the highest K rate in the league versus right-handed pitching as a team. That 27.6% K rate for the Cincinnati Reds, 8% walk rate against righties, which, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's 21st in the league. So it's not even like they're drawing a ton of walks. They have an 81 high upside matchup, and one of these spots where I think you could get to either side. But the more I look at it, the more I look at how bad the pitching is. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it's bad. The pitching is bad. By the way, can you hear me? It just said my internet is unstable.
You cut out for a second. So the answer is I could hear you, but I missed the middle of what you had said before.
Okay.
And it looks good now in Zoom.
Wicked storms around here. So I assumed this was going to happen. Either way, what I'm saying is Cincinnati's K rate is massive. It's almost as high as Cincinnati or as Seattle. And to your point that you just made, pitching's already not good. Weather's already super sketchy. This is a high upside spot for Lance Lynn, no matter how you cut it.
Yeah. And it's also nice. This is one of the spots we don't have to worry about any weather. One other thing that I think we should bring up, because like you had said, the weather's really shitty by you. I'm looking outside by me. It's starting to get really windy and the clouds are getting dark. I mean, the weather in New York, it is now 90% chance of thunderstorms through from 4 p.m. until about 8 p.m. and then 50% chance of thunderstorms later on. I think that the Mets-Dodgers game, very, very risky. That's the one that I probably now feel the least confident in it playing.
Okay. Are there spots that you're going to... I don't think we know. I don't think you can do so yet, right? I was going to say, are there spots that you might consider fading? But
yeah, I'm about to rerun the contest generator and take the Mets-Dodgers game out.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's as of right now, it's a 90% chance of thunderstorms.
Also, and you know, I don't want to read too far into this, but you're right. It looks really bad. Also, it's also a later game, which makes it more difficult, right?
Yeah.
Because like if this were an early game, you could be like, okay. But to your point, like you and I were talking about this before the show. Why didn't they start it at 4? Because you're right, they could have included the 5 p.m. game in there, right? They could have done all of that. I get what you're saying. The tough thing is there's a lot of 4 p.m. games on this slate. There's 5 of them or 6 of them.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also why I would have preferred if they did the 4 p.m. because they could have done the 4 p.m. slate, and then instead of having the the earlier games, you could have just included the 5 and the 6 o'clock game, and we would have had the lineups for all those by now. I mean, not by now, but by the time the slate started, we would have all of them.
Why did Dale get timed out? I don't think he said anything wrong, did he?
Dale said anything.
Let me give you guys a tip. This is part of my job for years. You're better off looking at the radar and not relying on meteorologist rain percent. I do. I strictly look at the radar.
Yeah, that's what I just did. I just pulled. Well, not only just necessarily the radar, but I mean for New York, I'm literally looking outside my window and looking at the clouds.
Yeah, it's not good. Also, I trust myself a lot more looking at a radar where it's like a huge blob of red coming through. I'm relatively confident knowing that also, did you know like the whole the rain percentage? It's not just the likelihood that it's going to rain, but it's like the amount of area that's
coverage.
Yeah. It's something like that. But like I said, yeah, I always look at the radar. Otherwise, who the hell knows? But what about, okay, so let's get back to some pitching here. We already covered a lot. Are there any guys, let me make it easier on all of us. Are there any guys that you just aren't getting to? It sounds like right now Gavin Stone is going to be one of them because of the conditions in New York. It's not like you would have been playing McGill anyway, I can't imagine. So that's easy enough. Gavin Stone was already getting very little ownership in our tools anyway at a mid 8K price point. Are there any other guys that you're just pretty uninterested in at pitcher?
Yeah, and then I mean, one other thing that you had kind of touched on there about the Mets Dodgers game, like I don't want to play McGill against the Dodgers anyway. I'm not super thrilled to ever roster Gavin Stone, really almost no matter who the opponent is, unless he was, like 5K pitching against the Rockies at home or something like that. But that wasn't the case. So just considering that I was looking at my lineups, I didn't really have exposure to either of the pitchers anyway. I figured why not just rerun everything, take it out. I don't really want to be stacking the hitters from that game either now, considering how likely I think that game is to potentially get postponed.
How about Gasser today against Chicago?
Let's see, 7,100. He's only projected for 6% ownership. I still think this guy is not good. His minor league numbers.
Okay, so you don't buy it.
I mean, his minor league numbers have been bad throughout his career. He was never a highly ranked prospect, so it's not like he's somebody who teams were in on or anything like that. Now watch, I just reran the Sims. Watch, all of a sudden I have like a bunch of him, which I didn't have before, and then I'll have to.
And you're like, I think Gasser's pretty good.
All right, here we go. I've got my top lineups selected again. Gasser. Yeah, I only have 3% of them. All right, so
I have 2% right now.
Yeah. So Gasser's numbers this year, he's made 3 starts. I'm not going to put too much weight into it. It's 3 starts. But even his minor league number, so 3 starts in the big leagues, he has a 2.65 ERA, 2.68 expected ERA. 3 starts in the minor leagues, 5.25 ERA, 6.83 FIP. Those are his minor league numbers this year. But it's 3 major league starts, 3 minor league starts. All right, if we put those aside, look at his numbers last year in the minor leagues. They weren't great either. He had 3.79 ERA, 4.52 xFIP. That was over 26 appearances. AAA the year before, 4.44 ERA, 4.97 xFIP. Then you go back to 2022 in A-ball, he had a 4.18 ERA, 3.4 xFIP. He's always generated strikeouts. That's the upside with him. We know he's a guy at every level he's pitched at so far, although funny enough, not at the big league level so far, but he's pitched more to contact. So he's generated strikeouts in the minor league level, but he's always given up a lot of runs and gotten hit pretty hard. He's also had a lot of walk issues in the minor leagues. But the thing that stands out the most to me, he's 24 years old. He's an unranked prospect. He wasn't somebody who was a high draft pick or anything like that. So I don't really see a reason to think this guy is all of a sudden going to be good at the big league level when he never really was in the minor leagues.
His strikeout rate is very enticing, though.
That's true.
At the solid 8% in 3 starts this season. 8%. Yeah, not good.
Let's see. What are all right projection models this year? Trying to look like what do they have as the fair strikeout projection for him for the rest of the season?
I would say, if I had to guess, 21% without looking.
Yeah, right around there. Steamer has him at 20%. Zips has him at 22%. The bat actually has him at 19%, so that's a little bit lower.
So I'm in the ballpark.
Like anywhere from like 19 to 22%.
Yeah, which is like slightly below league. 21 league average this year is 23%. So yeah, I don't know. I don't love this spot, honestly. Josh actually in chat, welcome back, brother. Glad to see you back. He said Gasser's sneaky today. Could be. I mean, on a slate like this, if I were ever going to take some shots on some of these guys, it probably, but here's the truth. And I'm willing to get burned on this. I like Lance Lynn better. And I know he's more popular, but he's not wildly overowned. I do at the same price. I like Lance Lynn a little better, just knowing that he has the strikeout upside. Cincinnati, this offense is not good. It's a good park. It's good conditions today. But if you're missing bats and they strike out at the second highest clip in the league, I like Lance Lynn over Gasser today.
Yeah, I mean, I have more exposure to Lance Lynn, Gasser. Let's see, what did I have? I just said that. So I reran everything, like I said, for the weather, and now I have 3% Gasser and 19% Lance Lynn. I like Lance
Yeah.
Lynn quite a bit better.
I'm also pulling a good amount. So I mentioned Morton, also a good amount of Steele. Um, I don't know what to make of him right now. First of all, he's cheap. And I think it's fair to say that Justin Steele, at no point, didn't you and I look this up? And like at one point last year, Steele was $10,000. Remember you and I looked that up last week or the
Yeah,
week before that? And he
I
was,
think it was. I could look. Here's when it was. I could tell you exactly. It was 11 days ago. It was May 16th for a start against the Pirates. And the thing that was
yes.
funny about it is he had like the most neutral starts. He pitched 5 2/3 innings. He had 7 strikeouts. He gave up 4 runs. So he finished with like 13 or 14 fantasy points at like $6,800 or 7 down. So it was a very neutral start that he had that outing. So it just ended up being kind of like a whatever sort of start for him. He's also pitched in some difficult matchups. He's pitched on the road against the Rangers. He's had to pitch against the Braves. He's had to pitch against the Padres so far. We haven't seen him work all that deep into games. One positive from his last couple of starts, he has struck out 12 hitters, just 2 walks. So we have seen an uptick in his strikeout rate the last couple of outings. Going forward, I assume he's going to be fine just because he's been good the entire time we've seen him pitch in the big league so far. His rookie season in 2021, he had a 4.26 ERA, 4.01 expected ERA. His second season, 3.18 ERA, 3.59 expected ERA. Last year, 3.06 ERA, 3.5 expected ERA. This year, he does have a 3.73 expected ERA so far, but he's a 5.68 actual ERA. So it's really been a product of his left on base rate is only 61.9%. He's only pitched 5 starts, 25 innings. But yeah, if you get Steele to his career normal of a 73.5% strand rate, then his 5.68 ERA is back closer to like the mid to high 3 range, and then he looks fine. He's also been a guy who's struck out hitters at a pretty decent clip over the course of his career. Not like prolific, but 25% K rate. I think he gets back to that. He's cheap right now. I like playing him a good amount.
I have no issues with it. Milwaukee strikes out a decent amount. Also, Hoskins on the IL doesn't.
But we just got news, by the way.
Yeah, the Gomber news. Go ahead.
All right. I don't know who the fuck this is. Anthony Molina.
Yeah,
is he one of the? Remember, there was like the 3 Molina brothers that were all catchers.
Yeah.
Is he the fourth one or something? Let's look this guy up. This is really important now.
Yeah. By the way, Austin Gomber scratched. Anthony Molina is starting. He last pitched on the 17th, 1 inning. Gave out through 28 pitches. 9 days before that, he went 3 2/3 in relief and threw 54 pitches. He's thrown 50 plus a couple times, 40 plus a few times this year. He has been tuned up in a lot of these starts as well. It's at Coors Field against a Cleveland team that already does. He's a righty, by the way, that already doesn't strike out a ton. Greg, he has a 12% strikeout rate in 16 2/3 innings. He has a 12% strikeout rate. Gee, dude, even looking at like some of these minor league numbers, you're talking AA and AAA, sub 20% K rate. Woo. Yeah, this changes a lot. Because Gomber hasn't been that bad. You say what you want about the guy. Austin Gomber has not been that bad this year.
One other thing, too, that's important about this, somebody had brought this up in the YouTube chat. Anthony Molina's a righty, so this does change things a little bit, too. Gomber's a lefty. Molina is a righty. Let's see. Is this guy not a ranked prospect? So this is going to be a bullpen game.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him get like 3 or so innings. There's no reason to believe he can't.
He has pitched 3 innings, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think we could see him go through the order like once, maybe once and a half.
Well, it might be once in the first inning.
That's true as well.
So we don't know. Good weather at Coors Field today, almost 80 degrees. Yeah, changes a lot for sure. I mean, Cleveland already had what, a 6.1 run implied total or something.
This is a much better situation. I mean, it's Coors Field. Like, there's how many, like, what your team total could only be so high, but it was 6.1 before, and this is a much better spot now. Like, does it become 7 now? It can't become 10 or anything like that, but close to 7, I think, is a possibility.
Also, Austin Gomber had not been bad. Like, he really had it. I'm not saying that this guy is nearly as good as he had been, right? Like, the underlying numbers weren't great. 419 xFIP, 413 xERA, but still, like, that's serviceable. 2.76 ERA for him this season. Not a guy that's going to get you a lot of strikeouts, but you had looked at Gomber even at home this year. He was more than serviceable. Like, the amount of times, Greg, you would have stacked against Gomber this season and gotten really unfavorable results is pretty much most of them. So, like, looking at his home starts, five innings, 1 earned against Texas, 7 innings, sure, 4 earned, but 4 earned, that was a bad one because 3 home runs against Houston. 5 innings, 1 earned against San Diego, 6 innings, 2 earned against Arizona, 4 innings, 2 earned against Tampa Bay. Difficult matchups. Austin Gomber at Coors Field. Granted, earlier in the season, it's not going to play the same as it is, in June or July or August. But this is a massive shift. This isn't just like, oh, there's another shitty starting pitcher for Colorado getting replaced by a shitty guy we don't know about. Like, here's a guy that's actually been better than advertised, being replaced by somebody that's been crushed every time he takes the mound.
One thing that is pretty funny, I don't know if you saw, we had a super chat that came in a little bit ago here from Corey Randall, who said, I know it's in Colorado, but I'm really thinking about rostering Austin Gomber today. Please talk me off this ledge. Took care of itself. No reason to consider Austin Gomber now, but certainly don't play Molina either. I'm really interested to see what the ownership ends up being, because now, I mean, the Guardians were already, in my opinion, the best team to get to on the slate. I don't know what like, are they going to be 25% owned now? Like, I need to see what the updated ownership looks like.
Yeah, I don't know, but I truly thought about playing some Austin Gomber earlier today. I was going to get to him as just like a kind of throwaway piece, but hey, he hasn't been that bad, and pitching is already terrible on this slate. I mean, the leverage you would have gotten with Austin Gomber is insane. Just given how we know that this Cleveland team is going to be pretty popular today. So that wipes him out. Are there any other pitchers that we haven't talked? Like, I think there's some guys that you're just not going to get to, be it weather or just you're not playing them in these specific spots. Are there any guys you want to talk about that you're getting to, that you have interest in, that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, Chris Bassett's popular. He's hard to get away from. He's got a matchup against the Chicago White Sox, who we know that this is a pretty piss-poor offense. I have stacked them at times against chalky pitchers. In fact, I actually stacked them last time out against Chris Bassett. And, if you look at Bassett's numbers, he pitched 7 shutout innings. They hit him really, really hard in that game. Like, they really should have scored 4 or 5 runs against Bassett. But, like, the first inning, I remember really well. Tommy Pham hits a ball into the gap with like 100-mile-per-hour exit velocity. Great play in the gap to rob him of a double. Then the White Sox end up loading the bases. There's a ball that's at like 105 miles per hour that leads to a double play. But I mean, either way, Chris Bassett this year, it's hard to not consider him just because he is so cheap against the Chicago White Sox. But not a pitcher that I'm going to have like some sort of massive overweight stand to. He's just somebody who's hard to get away from.
Any interest in Mitchell Parker?
No. Do I have any lineups with it? No, I don't have any lineups with him.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to get to. Real tough. Pitching, by and large, is pretty gross for this slate.
Yeah, I don't think any of the chalk pitchers are bad chalk, do you?
Given the context of the slate, no. Like, just given what your alternatives are, no, I don't think so. I don't think Steele is bad chalk. You ran through all of the numbers. He hasn't been great, but I think it's difficult to get away from him. Like, he has a 382 weighted on base average against righties this year, 320 ex-WOBA. that's not great, but it's not that much worse than league average. 193 x ISO, 297 actual ISO. So I think, and against lefties, just significantly better. But I think there's probably a bit of a bounce back there just based on him getting a little bit unlucky in these spots.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, still, he's so priced down. We're at a point now where Justin Steele is priced comparably to Chris Bassett. And even though we have seen the unlucky starts of the year for Justin Steele, his ERA is high. Like, I'm very confident that he's a better pitcher than Chris Bassett going forward.
The Minnesota game is the one that's driving me nuts the most, because you have Ryan on one side, who's clearly the most talented pitcher on this slate. And then on the other side, you have Alec Marsh, who really hasn't been all that bad at all. Again, you could argue that he's been better than he is. And I think you could say that about a lot of guys on this slate, but Alec Marsh has actually pieced together some really good starts this season to where we've gotten him on a lot of bad pitching slates. I know this because I've talked about him being like, no, it's fine. I'll run him out there against Seattle. I'll run him out there against the Angels. If it's a decent enough matchup, I'll play him. He's been pretty good this season, and it's not like he's a high upside player. We know that, but Minnesota is the type of team that can kind of roll over sometimes from a strikeout standpoint and give you those games you're looking for on these type of slates. He's not getting a ton of ownership. Minnesota has a top 10 K rate, sub 100 WRC plus. They do have power against righties. We know that. And that's why these matchups can be tricky. They're top 5, tied with the Phillies in ISO against righties, but he's $8,000. He's been very consistent outside of a couple of starts. It's just the weather. And are you looking to pay $8K for Alec Marsh today, who's not a particularly high upside guy, but has been consistent and can kind of give you those like 20 fantasy point games, although win equity doesn't look as good going up against Ryan on the other side either.
Yeah. Alec Marsh, not really a pitcher I'm getting to. I have him in, let's see, how many of my top 150 lineups of Alec Marsh? 4% of them. So not really somebody that I'm interested in playing. Also, we just had a projections update, ownership as well as player projections for the change to the Colorado Rockies starting pitcher there. Guess how many fantasy points, if you haven't looked at it, do we have Molina projected for?
Well, it's not negative.
No, it's not negative.
4.3.
2.74.
Damn, I thought it was going to be low, but I didn't know how low it was going to be.
It's low.
So are you getting any of him?
I don't even think he's in the player pool.
He is.
Is he in the player pool?
Yeah. Yeah, he's made a lot of starts. He's made a lot of appearances this year.
Well, either way, no.
Yeah. He's made 9 appearances with the Rockies this year. And the large majority of them have not gone all that well. So, no, that's not fair. Not large majority, but he's been knocked around. Against Arizona on opening day, he went a third of an inning with 6 runs allowed. So that's clearly inflating that ERA, but we'll see, man. We'll see. Hey, by the way, shout out to some of our people. Did you see some of the screenshots that rolled in over the weekend, dude?
I was out and about this weekend. Let's see him. I didn't get a chance to see. I saw some of the stuff like Sean Jeezy wins. Somehow he wins every single showdown GPP. So I saw the ones that he had sent me, but I didn't see a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of them. And I will say this much, NBA's winding down. There's a good chance, and sorry to say it, Josh, but there's a good chance, these like Boston sweeps tonight. They're 7-point favorites. I think it's unlikely that Halliburton's going to play. Holiday was at shoot around, so things are looking up for them. The Dallas Mavericks. Ooh, man, this is what happens. You're a Minnesota fan. You know what happens in Minnesota all the time, and you get so cocky. Where's Eric at? Where's Draft Cheat? I love Pete. Man, throwing out tweets like, what was it, Pete? Oh yeah, for you money lovers out there, it was like a plus 750 sweep for Minnesota. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Jeepers, creepers, it's been a rough go. I think Minnesota gets one. Who knows? Maybe they make a run. My point is, the MLB Sims, the MLB ownership, top stacks, top hitters tool, top pitchers tool, premium Discord, all of that stuff. What are you going to do over the summer, man? Get access to the best tools out there, the preeminent tools out there, Sims, contest generator, the post-lock simulator, or post-game, post-contest sim, even late swap. Late swap might come in real handy for you today based on this weather and us not having lineups. I know it's typically for basketball, but for baseball, when you've got these wild games with weather and the start times 3 hours separated from each other, could use it for sure. Links in the description and in the chat for all of those. If you want to check it out, you can do a week, a month, Sims, or lineup generator if you're looking for a better entry point. But just shout out to John Good. Huge one, huge takedown. That was in NBA Showdown. Dion O'Neal, another one. Saturday layup, just absolutely crushed. Sean Geezy, 22K. That's another NBA one. And then how about the bat flip? Z Roth, Greg, $20,000 second place in the bat flip the other day. So the hits keep coming in. The wins keep rolling in. You love to see it. And I don't know, dude, what are you going to do with no basketball? Like the showdowns have been killing it for the Sims, but you're going to have baseball every day. You're going to have multiple slates. So I think it's a good time to check it out.
And one other thing to let people know, if you're looking to do best ball drafts in the upcoming days, we got a free best ball package over at Stochastic.com. And free doesn't mean that it's not good. These are projections that Kajeski has spent a lot of time working on. He's also going to be having free content that's going up. All you have to do if you guys are doing some best ball drafts, want access to our best ball data, which is projections for drafters, underdog, as well as DraftKings. There's player rankings in it as well. You could export them and upload them directly to these sites so that the pre-draft rankings are already loaded in. Just create an account totally for free over at Stochastic, and you get access to our free best ball package.
Also, Matt Kajeski's just super sharp with that stuff. And, you know, he's a good guy to be using his projections and rankings for. And by the way, no hate on you Minnesota fans. I just say that as someone who is a Philadelphia fan that has seen teams look really good and then disappear quickly in the postseason, specifically this similar iteration of the Phillies that we have of the Sixers that we have right now that can't get past the second round. I feel your pain, but I also watched you boisterously celebrating what was already an NBA Finals victory. And we saw how that went. We knew how that was going to go. Man, what if Minnesota comes back? Anyway, check it out, guys. All our tools, links in the description chat if you want to do a week or a month. But yeah, shout out to all the winners. We'd love to have you guys over there. And if you do, say what's up in the Discord. Happy to help you out, not just with like showing you around, but Greg's done awesome tutorials on all these tools. Make sure that you're actually learning these tools quickly and then jumping straight into the game. It'll go a long way for you. All right. I think we've hit on most of these pitchers. I'm not sure there's anybody else. Lodolo is the only guy right now that I'm kind of unsure on because I think you could go out there and just get a massive start for him or he gets tuned up. That game for me is the most interesting because, Greg, on both sides, I have no problem getting to either bats. I also have no problem getting to either pitcher. I think I like Lodolo a little bit more than you do, and that's only because we have him with such nice positive leverage in our tools, and it's because he's got a really solid K rate.
Yeah, and to me, I just don't think he pitches very deep into the game, which is the reason I'm off of him at $9,800. I have to rerun everything now, which I'm doing because of the change of pitcher in the Coors Field game. But the last run I had, I think it was 3 of my top 150 lineups had Lodolo. So even at 10% ownership, I was underweight to him.
Okay. How do you want to approach some of these stacks today? Like Cleveland, I'm not really sure how you're getting away from Cleveland today.
Yeah, have to play Cleveland. That's a team I'm going to have a good amount of exposure to. We also got a question in Discord from Einstein. He wants to know, how do we feel about Boston as a contrarian value stack? I think that's a contrarian team that also makes sense to be getting to when you consider the amount of wind that's blowing out to left center field there at Fenway. Yeah, I think that's enough to boost the offenses to make Boston a contrarian low dollar team to get to. Not my favorite low dollar team to get to, though. That's one we talked about before, Lofty. That is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals.
I'm with you.
For me, you don't know what it is that we're going to be getting out of Lodolo coming back. This is a team that has a lot of hitters that historically are better against lefties than they are against righties. And the team is so cheap. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, $3,800 and $3,700. So Boston, fine as a value stack. My favorite overall value stack, it is going to be the St. Louis Cardinals, just because the pricing is so crazy there.
I like him too. We talked about it. I like both sides, honestly. I'm not entirely opposed to Cincinnati against Lance Lynn either. The guy still can give up power. I understand winds blowing out to left and not right, so it doesn't benefit the lefties as much. But we saw it, a 3-homer game earlier this season. He's always been someone that when Lance Lynn when he's not hitting his spots, things can go south quickly. And it's a good park. It's warm in Cincinnati. That's really not a bad spot. What about Colorado, though, against Xavier and Curry?
And then also Sniff said it's in Baltimore. Yeah, sorry. Baltimore versus Boston. Yeah, wind is still blowing out. I misspoke which team was home, but yeah, the wind is blowing out there.
What about Colorado against Curry? By the way, they still have a total north of 5.5 today.
Yeah, it's a Coors Field game. So the preferred side of the game, it has to be Cleveland, considering that they're going up against Molina, who we don't have that much information on, but the information we do have, the guy looks like he's terrible. So it is a team that Cleveland preferred side, but I'm not writing off Colorado. They're at home. It's a small-ish slate that we have here as well. And just the fact that you're able to play a team, let's see, what is their updated ownership now? I know that we've been updating data here. So now in the top stacks tool, we have the Rockies, 7% ownership. We have them with the third highest odds being the top scoring team on the slate. It's not like Xavier Curry. By the way, the most insane spelling of a name I've ever seen. Who starts name with an X and a Z? So, but also, it's not like Xavier Curry is some elite starting pitcher we should be afraid of or anything like that. The only two teams we have with better odds being a top scoring team than the Rockies today are the Guardians and the Blue Jays. So yeah, I think the Rockies are a team to be getting to at not all that much ownership, 7% at Coors Field.
Xavier Curry has never had a strikeout rate. Like, he has a career strikeout rate 15% at the major league level. It's not particularly good, especially when you're looking at this park. 31% career ground ball rate. These are the type of things that typically don't do well for you at Coors Field.
Yeah, if you want to have success at Coors Field, you kind of have to generate some amount of strikeouts, and that is something that he's never really shown the ability to do.
I don't mind the Rockies at all today.
No, I like them.
Yeah, I like them quite a bit. How owned are they going to be compared to some of these other spots? I feel like the Rockies just never get a lot of ownership.
Yeah, 7% as a team. So it's not as low as we see them on other spots, but it's an 8-game slate that has, a lot of weather concerns. This isn't one of those spots. I'm going to have more than 7% of them. I've got a sim running that's going to be done like 30 seconds here. But yeah, the last time I had run lineups, I had around 10% of them.
They also don't have a single player north of $4,900 at Coors against Xavier Curry.
It's a good matchup.
What?
It's a good matchup. It's a good ballpark.
I know, I'm saying, but there's no one even in the 5K range. Not saying there should be. It's not exactly a good baseball team, but there's just, it's pretty crazy. What other spots you want to get to before we get out of here and let people finish, but let me finish getting these lineups in now that we're getting all this news.
Yeah. So as far as other spots to be getting to, what else looks good? Oh, so one other team that I'm finding myself on a lot here is the Atlanta Braves. So the Braves are getting Riley back into the lineup today. He had been out for a meaningful amount of time. They have a matchup against Mitchell Parker, which I think is probably a pretty good one. And there's it's the Atlanta Braves. This is one of the higher upside teams that we have in baseball. 6% projected ownership on a small slate. And then something else to add to this as well, there isn't that much opportunity cost to spending up at offenses today relative to other slates, because we've got Chris Bassett for cheap. We've got Justin Steele for cheap. So I don't find it all that difficult to pay up for an offense like them. And yeah, Mitchell Parker this year, he's pitched okay. 3.32 ERA, 3.67 expected ERA, but he does not generate strikeouts at all. 20%. He puts a lot of balls in play, which is kind of interesting because it's way different from what his outlook was like in the minor leagues. Last year in AAA, he had a 10.45 ERA, actually 5.9 FIP. The year before this was actually same year in AA, 4.2 ERA, 3.52 FIP, and was generating a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks. So it's weird. This is a guy who is giving up a lot of runs in the minor leagues, generate a lot of strikeouts, also walked a ton of guys. Now in the big leagues, he's throwing a lot of strikes, isn't walking guys, also isn't generating strikeouts. So it's hard to really know what to make of him, but my intuition is that he is not going to be good going forward. And I think it's a good spot to get to the Braves at lower ownership.
And by the way, Ronald Acuna done for the year.
Yeah. Torn ACL again.
Brutal. Josh said Colorado's his most exposed stack. I understand it. I really do. I'll tell you what, man, I don't really think Cleveland should be that much higher owned than the Rockies today. Even with Austin Gomber in, I don't think I would have liked Cleveland nearly as much as the field was getting to them. Cody said, do you have the Rockies winning today? Well, I'll tell you this much. When you can get decent money line bets on dogs, it makes sense to do so. I think this is actually like one of the spots where I don't hate them at plus money today. It depends what you're getting them at. I'd have to look on our live odds tab over on Odd Shopper, but
yeah, I don't even know, because last I had looked, there was no line up because of the pitching change. I would be, let's see. It's like a pick 'em.
Well, that's what it was before Gomber went out.
Yeah, they're plus 110 now. It's not enough. It's not enough plus money.
It's not. They were even money to plus 105 everywhere I looked. And I'm still seeing them in spots like at Pinnacle, they're plus 110. They were plus 107 earlier. It hasn't really moved at all, matter of fact.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason too is, I mean, if this does end up being a bullpen game for the Rockies, a bullpen game is generally more beneficial to the pitching of a team, just because, pitchers, even like poor middle relievers, are still guys that generally have like ERAs in the mid threes and stuff like that, which is still better than a lot of starting pitchers. But yeah, the betting odds actually really didn't move that much for the starting pitching change, which I don't totally agree with that. I think they probably should have, because like you mentioned before, Molina could go 3 innings, and if he is going to be stretched out in any kind of way, his numbers are pretty shitty.
Yeah, and Gomber just hasn't been terrible. So yeah, I would have thought they'd move. I would have thought this move shift to like plus 130. Honestly, now I'm tempted to take the Cleveland side on the money line. Makes more sense to me. Anyway, oh, by the way, guys, if you are checking out our free best ball tools, don't forget, if you're not on Underdog, like if you're playing best ball and you're only doing it on DK or like other, you have to get on Underdog. They got $17 million in prizes for best ball this year. 17 million. And like entry sizes as low as $3, $5, $25, the big ones, the small ones, just huge prize pools everywhere. Daily drafts for NBA, MLB, the NFL ones are huge. For every slate you can imagine. The pick'em, where you can up to 20x your money. Straight pick'em sites taking the higher or lower on all of these player projections. They have every format you can imagine. And right now with their new bonus, it's a 50% match up to $250 instantly. So no matter what you put in, up to $250 getting matched instantly on 50%. So huge sign-up bonus there. Link in the description and chat if you're not on Underdog yet. Anything on the 1 p.m. game? But like I said, down there, if you're not on Underdog, and use our free best ball projections and rankings for sure. Matt Gajewski's a wizard with that shit. Anything on the 1 p.m. game, Baltimore stacks in play? Well, you had talked a little bit about that game a second ago, given the win.
Yeah, I think that Baltimore, Boston, both the offenses are okay to get to. I don't have that much exposure to them. One of the reasons is because I did feel like I needed to give my lineups a little bit more flexibility for the rain situations, and that we don't have all the starting lineups yet. So probably going to have to make some late swaps, but I have Baltimore in 3% of lineups. I have Boston in 4%. So let's see, what is that relative to the field? I'm a little bit underweight to Baltimore. So yeah, I'm a little bit underweight to each of these stacks, but like nothing significant.
The truth is we're going to be doing a good amount of late swapping, I could imagine, like one way or another.
Yeah, it sucks, but kind of inevitable that, I mean, what lineups are we still missing? We are missing.
Dodgers just came in.
We're missing Cleveland. Right, that's an important one. Missing the Dodgers. That doesn't matter. I don't even have that in my player pool right now.
That just came in right now, Greg.
Missing, yeah, Dodgers just came out. Missing Washington, missing Chicago, missing Milwaukee.
Yeah, so we're missing a bunch. Let's see if you guys have any other questions. Sorry, I'm trying to get these uploaded. By the way, Charlie Morton and Steele are my two highest exposed pitchers right now. What are yours? And then Lodolo is third at 18%.
Joe Ryan and Steele.
Oh, okay. Joe Ryan. Let me see how much Ryan I have. Yeah, he's essentially tied for third for me. I'm not just looking at this now. Hold on a second.
Yeah, just uploaded my lineups. And then the teams that I'm getting the most of right now: Cleveland, Colorado, Atlanta, Toronto, St. Louis.
Yeah. What I was going to say is the guys I'm just getting very little of, not a lot of Marsh at that price point. Gasser, Cooper Criswell, Curry, McGill. I have like 11% Lance Lynn, 10% Mitchell Parker, 16% Bassett. So it looks now like Bassett's probably going to be the guy that I'm just well under the field on.
I don't think there was like any pitcher I came in way underweight to. Like I'm a little bit underweight to Bassett. I have him in a quarter of my lineups when the field is playing him in a third. So he is the one that I'm the most underweight to of the popular pitchers, but it's not by much. He's still, like I said, in a quarter of my lineups.
Yeah. Again, I think things change. What's the only early game? Baltimore and Boston, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. We'll be able to make some adjustments. Anyway, appreciate you guys hanging out. Hey, have a great rest of the Memorial Day weekend. What do we got going on tonight? You got MLB or NBA Live Before Lock. Are they running a sizable enough? Like, I guess they can't do anything for MLB since there's a 5 o'clock game and then only 2 late games, right? So just an NBA show?
There's really nothing else for baseball. There's a 4 p.m. slate on DraftKings, but it is very, very tiny contests. And then the main slate on FanDuel is, let's see, what are the different FanDuel ones throughout the day? There is, dude, the fucking FanDuel app. They link together the DFS app and the Sportsbook app.
I know.
And now all the time I try to look up DFS contests and it just pulls up the Sportsbook when I click on baseball. It's very
That's annoying. Where they want you to go. Yeah.
All right. So the baseball slate on FanDuel that locks. Dude, why are the... All right. The app just isn't working right now.
I mean, I can just tell you on my computer.
It says error loading contests when I try to look at them. And then it says swipe app down or try again later. And then I just try again later.
So the 60K Monday squeeze, 410 start. And 60K in prize pool, almost filled already. Yeah, it's almost filled. Huh. All right, appreciate you guys. We'll see you back here tonight, live before lock and on playback. So be sure to come hang out. Could be the end of this Boston, Indiana series, but there's still money to be made. Shit, you saw those showdown wins from all those stochastic avatars. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 11 o'clock Eastern, MLB Strategy Show. Peace.